Good afternoon to everyone. Today I will present to you the topic of the digital product passport and its connection with sustainability and circularity. Before starting, I want to mention two European projects that supported this research work. The first one is European project CoDEMO, mainly focused on collaborative networks and collaboration between different actors. And the other one is PSS PASS, a European Research and Innovation Action Project based on digital product passport and the integration of services and PSS business models in the DPP. Before starting, just a brief introduction of who I am. I'm Luca Carminati, a second-year PhD student from University of Bergamo. Main topic of my research is product service systems, collaborative networks, and digital product passport, which is the main topic of my PhD. The main focus of my PhD is integrating PSS into the concept of the digital product passport and understand how can we exploit the digital product passport to deliver new services and improve the existing ones. The research that I'm conducting and we are conducting as University of Bergamo is strongly collaborating with different industrial partners and research networks that are present in and are working in the previously mentioned project, which is a PSS PASS. The objectives for today, I want to present to you what is the digital product passport and why it's important. Highlight how can the DPP supports and enables new services related to end-of-life and circular business models. And then I want to show you an example of how the DPP can look like and how can we move towards the DPP. The agenda of today, we will start by presenting the context and the sustainability motivation to the DPP. I will then explain briefly the shift from linear to circular systems. And then I will move on digital product passport. How can we use the digital product passport to enable some end-of-life services and the challenges related and roadmap. At the end, we will have a brief Q&A if there is any question. So nowadays, transparency is becoming more and more important along the value chain because on one hand, all European policies are pushing companies to be more transparent, especially in relating to sustainability aspects. But on the other side, being transparent can bring different values and benefits for companies. Like, for example, it can enhance company image, but also it can be a competitive differentiation factor. So transparency is not just a reporting requirement nowadays, but it can become a strategic asset. Especially if we want to shift from a linear system as it was a few years back, like take, make, and dispose, to circular system, so giving a second life to products at the end of their life cycle, we need to be more transparent, not with everyone, but with some specific actors in the value chain. Because if we can make some of our data, if we can exchange some data with actors along the value chain, we can also enable new processes and improving the existing ones. And of course, this transition to the circularity, as I was saying before, requires data visibility along the product life cycle. But in this context, we need to understand how can we make data visible if we want to make them visible. Also European, as I was saying before, European Commission and the European Union is pushing a lot to the shift from linear production to circular value business model. I reported here some policies and initiatives of the European Union. The one that we are interested in is ESPR, Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, because this is the one where the concept of the DPP was introduced. So to recap, traceability is becoming more and more important as a strategic enabler for companies, but we need to find new data practices and new exchange methods for exchanging data to be effective on this point. And this is where the digital product passport concept comes in. So moving on the main theme of this webinar, the digital product passport, what is it? It was introduced first in the regulation 1781 in June 2024, and is defined as a structured digital data set attached to a product. If you have no idea what a digital product passport is, you can think of it like a product identity card that can contain a lot of information regarding the product itself all along its life cycle. I said it can contain because today there are some mandatory data, but there are only a few, and the others are mainly can be added by the company. The company can decide if you want to add something or not. Probably in the future, there will be more data make mandatory to be on the DPP because the concept is really new. But for now, you can decide what to include, but we need also to think what has some value to include in the DPP. The main features of the DPP is that it can contain product-specific data, as I was saying before, but the main one is that it is accessible to multiple stakeholders at the same time with different grade of permissions. So you can decide to put one specific data in the DPP, and you can make it visible only to some specific actors in the DPP. And another data can be visible to other actors, but not maybe not the same of the previous one. And so you have a common architecture, a common ground to communicate with different actors in different methods on different topics in a way that is standardized and interoperable. So the DPP can be accessed by different stakeholders. As I was mentioning before, the access is role-based, so you can decide who can read a specific information and who can also write some specific information. And each actor can generate and put data on the DPP or updates part of it. In this way, we can ensure data continuity across the entire life cycle. So the first question that maybe can come to your mind is, what can we include in the DPP? I will take just a brief step back. I will present to you now some results of a study we conducted in the context of the European project PSS Pass, and we published in an APMS conference discussed in Japan this September. So for this study, our objective was to identify what can we include in the DPP and which actors could be involved in the DPP ecosystem. Our objective was not, for the moment, for the study that we conducted, to identify what needs to be included in the DPP, because the mandatory data are only 3 of them right now. You can find them in the eco-design regulation. And for the first step, we wanted to identify what the research is studying to include in the DPP. Another next step that will be addressed by the PSS Pass project is to understand what we should include in the DPP for specific services. For this specific study, we have analyzed 2 main sources of information. The first one are academic papers, journal papers and conference papers. However, journal papers, especially, has a lot of delay in publication. You have to wait 1 year in a good scenario or more to publish something. And so if you want to stay updated on the advancements on DPP, on a topic really new like DPP, conference papers are more, we addressed also conference paper, but you have also there a delay in time in publication. So another source that we used for our study are European projects. I will present to you later some European projects on the DPP, because if you want to stay on track on the DPP, on the latest DPP updates, I suggest you to check European projects outputs, because outputs of European projects is published sooner, and some articles are based on mainly on the work done on European projects. So on these premises, we have done this work, and we have identified some information that could be included in the DPP. And we have tracked the frequency of mention. If some information are less mentioned in the literature, it's not that they are less important, but for example, if you see identification and permission, we can find DPP ID, which is a mandatory information. So it's less discussed because it's less topic of interest. We know that it will be mandatory, and it is a less topic of interest for the research community. But you can say that the more cited information are probably the ones that are more interesting for the research community. We can find different information, like information regarding value chain that are involved in the DPP, or indicators, because if we need to put a lot of information in DPP, we will sustain a cost in terms of time, in terms of money. And so if we can aggregate a lot of information in an indicator, it will be better because it's easier to understand, and also is easier to maintain in the DPP. Then you can find different type of information related to different levels of granularity. The research community is focusing on 3 main levels: the batch level, the model level, and the item level. Of course, the more you go deeper in level of detail, the more, for example, services you can enable because you have more information. However, you need to manage to get this information also for other actors along the value chain, which is not that easy. So what we are seeing with companies is that they are mainly focused right now on model data. So not the last one, but the second from the bottom of the slide, because it's easier to gather this data and to include them in the DPP. But there is a lot of interest, especially from the research and academic community, to information related to the single item. So for example, the single washing machine, because in this way you can, for example, track maintenance logs. You can include maintenance logs or usage data, components that were refurbished and included in the final product. In this way, you can enable a lot of new services like predictive maintenance, end of life services, and so on. The problem is that, for example, for some usage data, you have some privacy concerns. So you need to manage how can I, for example, gather some usage data from a customer if I'm profiling him, or her. So in theory, we can have all this information. In practice, probably less than this. The passport. There is also some debate on how the passport is accessed. Currently, there is no method defined and univocally defined, but there is a lot of discussion on it. Some methods proposed is a QR code or a NFC RFID tag, or, but less probable, is a digital link only. The reason that there is a discussion on that point is because the access method should be easy for everyone, not only for companies, but also, for example, for customers. If we put in the DPP energy labels or manuals for usage and so on, for customers and end users, we need that also the end user can access the DPP on some specific information. And so, for example, the QR code is the easier method. However, there is a lot of discussion on the identifier also because there are some security concerns. I don't know if you are aware of that, but probably a few years back, there were a lot of scams related to QR codes, where, for example, you can use a QR code to order at the bar, but some people were replacing official QR code with other ones. And so also in this context, we need to be aware that what we are putting on the product, especially if it goes into the end user market, is secure and is official. But at the end, we will have a data carrier which, for example, will be a QR code. We can scan it, and then we can access the digital product passport on some specific information related to our user profile. The second question and the second point that we addressed in our study was to understand the actors that could be involved in the DPP. There are different ones. Everyone essentially can be involved in the DPP. The question is, who should I involve for my objectives and who wants to be involved? Here in the slides, I reported some actors. As you can see, there are manufacturers, suppliers, but also end-of-life actors, repairers, refurbishers, maintainers, but also government stakeholders or NGOs to monitor aspects for regulation, for example, or normatives. The main problem is not identifying the actors that could be involved, but to engage the actors in our DPP for our objectives. We can see later the challenges related to that point. Now I want to show you one example of DPP, because there is a lot of talking about the DPP, but there are not a lot of examples of what it is. This is an example made by Zwei, which is an industrial company, a German industrial company in the electronic sector. This example of the DPP is public. I put the link in the slide, but at the end I will share with you the link if you want, if you need it. And they made an example of a DPP of a cabinet. And as you can see, there are also there is a DPP of the product, so the cabinet, but there are also DPPs of different components. Be aware that right now for the regulation, for some sectors, the DPP will be mandatory for some products, but not for the components. So it's up to your choice. For example, if you produce a cabinet, if you want also the DPP of the switchgear, because, for example, you want to enable new services based on the DPP of the switchgear, and you need that level of granularity of information. So, for example, here for the cabinet, you can find different information like bill of material, nameplate, and so on. But for other components, you can find the carbon footprint or the technical documentation related to that specific component, and some images and general info, like dimensions. So this is an example of how the DPP can look like. Right now, there is no convergence of the research community towards a specific architecture and a specific user interface. So if probably in the future there will be a reference architecture, probably the user interface can be adapted to as everyone can choose. So this is an example, but of course it can be different based on the needs of different companies. But as you have seen, it's if there are a lot of information, it's not that easy to navigate through this information. And so probably, as I was saying before, including indicators will be easier if we want, for example, to give some specific information for some specific processes. Also because if we put a lot of information, we need to maintain them. As I was saying before, there are a lot of, not a lot, there are some projects on DPP. If you want to be updated on the latest research of Digital Product Passport, I suggest you to look at these European projects. I strongly suggest PSS Pass, which is the one that we are working on, but there are a lot of other valuable European projects, like, for example, CIRPAS that ended a few months back, or CIRPAS 2, which is ongoing, and also CircThread. I reported here some example you can check for the work done if you want to see the latest advancements on DPP. I think that now is clear that the DPP has a potential, not only as a mean to be regulatory compliant, but also to enable new services, for example, or new process, or make the existing processes more efficient. But just to make a recap, DPP can become a strategic advantage for a company. For example, it can help in reducing waste and errors by enhancing material and component visibility. It can help in improving the risk management and the resilience of the company and of the supply chain, because by increasing the collaboration between actors, we can manage better the risk. And of course, it can enable a lot of end-of-life services and end-of-life processes, and increases the sustainability of the products. In fact, the DPP can enable a lot of more sustainable decisions. For example, if you think of extending a product lifetime, if we can include in the DPP maintenance logs, state of health, usage data, we can coordinate with different actors, not only in the middle of life, but also in the end of life, to understand what was changed in a product and what is, for example, now still working. If you think of a washing machine, you can, at the end of life of your washing machine, maybe your motor is still in a good condition, but the electronic motherboard is gone. So if you have different DPPs and you can track the condition of different components, you can, of course, improving the end of life and saving monies. It's something that is easy to say, is more difficult to put in practice, because of course it's difficult to have all this data. But in theory, the DPP can enable a lot of new decisions. Also, if you think of LCA computation with the DPP, you can have more data from different actors and enables more detailed computation of the LCA. But of course, this talking is strongly based on collaboration, which is the main enabler of DPP. If we have no collaboration, the DPP is not useful. So we need collaboration with different actors in different phases of the product life cycle. The DPP is not only for the end of life, is not only for the middle of life, but it can be also a tool for the beginning of life. For example, if you think of circular business models, DPP can also be useful in design and production, because if it includes material composition and recyclability data, it can help in designing new products with a more sustainable design. But the main topic of interest right now for research is on maintenance, because of course, if you can include in the DPP product information, manuals, maintenance logs, you can enable a lot of maintenance services, also predictive ones, which is very difficult to put in practice. and also a lot of end-of-life services like refurbishment that I was talking before, and remanufacturing. Implementing the APP involves a lot of challenges. The first one are technical, because the first main challenge is that we need a common ground to communicate with actors. If I put a specific usage data, I need that this usage data is understood in the same way for all the actors involved in the value chain. It's something that is very easy to say, but very difficult to do, because we need ontologies for that, especially if we have very specific data. So we need a common ground where is defined what a specific data is, what we mean with a specific name of a data, to be aware that everyone agrees on that. The other technical challenge is that DPP must connect with the existing technology of a company. So we need to understand how can we connect our DPP architecture with the ERP, PLM softwares already existing in the companies. This is something that in the European projects, also in PSS Pass, but they are doing. Because of course you don't want to include the information manually, but you want that sometimes is automatic. So especially for a large amount of information. And so if you are interested in this topic, I suggest you to look at the European project that I was mentioning before, because they are also dealing with this aspect. And then the last topic is on security. So you need to be sure that the DPP is a safe environment to communicate sensitive information of your company. Right now is strongly based on blockchain, and there is a lot of discussion on cybersecurity around the DPP. It will be a safe environment, but is a topic to keep in mind when we are implementing our own architecture. Then the DPP has a lot of organizational and social challenges. You need a lot of collaboration, and so you need to align different actors with different interests along the value chain. You need to define responsibilities, but you need the first time to motivate everyone in using the DPP. So you need to show to the actors the value that the DPP can bring to you, but also to them. And why you need their data, because, for example, you can implement a new service that also can bring value also to other actors. This is the most difficult challenge, because it's difficult to engage everyone in an environment like this. And the other main challenge is that it will probably require a lot of new skills. Also, this one is a topic that is a topic of interest of the different European projects. But of course, we need to understand what, for example, the reskilling that this DPP and these DPP workflows implies to operators, especially on who puts the data and how. Now I want to conclude by presenting you a very brief roadmap. It's very quick, very simple, because we are working on making a more detailed roadmap and processes that you need to follow to implement a DPP in our project. But just to give you an idea, the first step is to understand what we have in our company. So understand if we are technological ready to our objectives. Then we need to define what we want, why we want to use the DPP, why specifically the DPP for a specific objective. And then we need to understand who we want to involve and how can we involve them in the DPP. The next step is to select the DPP platform that we want to use, the user interface. As I said, right now there is no regulation on that. So probably in the future maybe there will be something, but right now we need to also understand the DPP architecture and the DPP user interface that we want to use. We need to select ontologies to communicate. We need to understand we need to prepare the common ground for communication between actors from different backgrounds. And then we can implement our DPP in a small pilot project and then try to extend it with different products and for different objectives. So some key takeaways of this webinar. Digital Product Passport could be a very useful tool to implement new services and improving existing processes. It requires a lot of collaboration of different actors, which is the main difficulty in this context. It can also improve a lot sustainability and the circularity of company business models. And of course, it has a lot of technical challenges that needs to be dealt with. Also, we are in the early phase of the DPP, so it's something that going on with the months will be more clear how to address some technical challenges. But nowadays we have some question marks on different points. Some acknowledgements, as I was mentioning at the beginning of the webinar, the work was supported by these two European projects, CoDEMO and PSS Pass. I suggest you to take a look at these projects if you are interested in collaboration or 5.0 topics is CoDEMO project. If you are interested in Digital Product Passport and service integration in DPP, I suggest you to look at PSS Pass. So I want to thank you for your attention, and if you want more details about the topic of this webinar, you can contact me or you can contact Professor Pirola, who is the scientific team leader of University of Bergamo for these projects. Thank you.